Okay. Okay, I will now call the workshop to order. We have the utility rate study presentation. So I will hand it over to you, Stephen.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, councilors. December 11th, we visited with you, and we promised we'd be coming back within a month-ish. We have finished all of the other work that we said we were going to work on, particularly water and stormwater. But if we can, we've got the obligatory PowerPoint to go through with you. And we want to revisit sewer rates because there was an issue that brought up at the last meeting, and we wanted to follow up with you to talk about implications. We'll talk about water, and we're going to have recommendations on water and stormwater. And then we'll do a quick recap and then open it up. Of course, anytime during my conversation with you, if you've got questions, just stop me. So here is the chart. If we could go to the next slide, the chart slide. There we go. Last time that green line was a 3% line, and it ended up showing a final rate of about $84. I think it was $83 and change. Council McElroy said, let's look at the historical growth rate. And we talked about population back then. And we kind of scratched our heads, and thank God I had Sadie. I asked her to go back into the billing system because population doesn't make revenue. Actual accounts make revenue. So we did a 3-year backward look of the actual compounded annualized growth rate in new connections to your sewer system. In other words, paying customers. And that came out to 6.86% per year compounded. So that green line now, because it's twice the rate, more than twice the rate of the 3% that we showed you, shows a terminal rate of about $70. Was it $69.45? So once again, it tells you the fuzziness of what we're working with here. We don't know what the cost of the project is. We don't know when the project's going to be done, and we don't know what our growth rate is. Other than that, we know pretty much everything else. You know, we're definitely up in the air here. And I think Councilor McElroy brought up a great point, and it does show that if you do experience your growth rate, and you think about the rule of 7, if you grow any investment at 7% per year on a compounded basis, you'll double your principal in 10 years. So let's keep that in your mind for a second. So let's talk about the next slide here. And this goes back, last month you had your infrastructure subcommittee had a meeting, and I watched the YouTube. Councilor McElroy, I think you were there. You were at that meeting. And the chair of the meeting said, why is this knucklehead Donovan asking us to raise the rates $10? All we need to do is $5. We don't need to raise the rates right now. And she's right. You don't. Except come 2027 or 2028, when the bill comes due, this is the expected principal and interest payments that you're going to be facing, the new payment that'll happen as a result of a $42 million wastewater treatment plant built over 3 years with a net borrowing of about $37 million because we got grants and things like that. So what you're talking about is $3.5 million that's going to be payable, due and payable in that year. And it's composed of the accrued interest. We talked about that. Accrued interest during construction was like $1.4 million. Then the principal and interest on the long-term loan, and then the additional loan that you've already got outstanding that you're already stepping on. So just to give you a sense of numbers, this fiscal year, you've budgeted to generate $1.6 million in sewer revenues. If we dump another 3.5 on top of that, that's effectively 127% of your current revenues is what 3.5 million is. Councilor McElroy brings up a great point. That 1.5 million is going to continue to grow at 6.8% per year. So over the next few years, that's going to generate revenue without even doing any rate increases. Just growth is going to generate more revenue for you. So we don't know, but that's a big nut. And it's a whole lot bigger nut than your revenue that you've got today, to the tune of 1.9 million more than your revenue right now. So that's why I'm saying this is going to be a big, expensive project, and the bill's going to come due. And what I'm really, really, really worried about, and I've seen this happen with other communities, we don't get the rates up fast enough, and then 2028 comes, and all of a sudden, we don't have enough money to pay back the loan. And then we go to the DEQ and we ask them, well, that accrued interest during construction, can we finance that too? So in other words, you're financing your finance charges. That's no bueno. That's not a good way to run a railroad. So we all know we got to get the rates up. The question is, Councilor McElroy, how fast do we get the rates up and how much do we get them up? So that's just the question. Right now, I definitely say a minimum of $5 on sewer until we get a better figure. Come May, you're going to be at 60%, 70% of design. And you're going to have a corresponding value to that. We can plug that back into the rate model and determine what that would be at that point. So you're getting better, but come July 1st, we definitely got to do something. So here is a quick chart of just to revisit what everybody else is charging and showing what you charge today. And if you raise it by $5, even if you raise it by $5, you'd still be in terms of your neighboring communities on the low end of the range. And we talked about that last time. Okay, let's talk about water. Go ahead.
Is 5 enough? Are there alternate numbers that we should be considering?
Yeah, there are.
But we'll figure that out once the design maybe is in place at that point.
Right. But what I want you to do is get on the escalator right away. Okay. Start getting on that treadmill. And what it's going to be is in my thinking, if we go back to those rate lines, if we do $5, we're going to go at a slow slope. If that price goes up and or stays where it is, and we still get done in 2027, and that 3.5 million is due in 28, slope of that line is going to get steeper. Mm-hmm. It's no surprise. So we're going to go $5, $8, $11, $14, something like that. Or do you want to go in a straight line, 10, 10, 10, 10? That's what I was driving at. And we didn't do a good job for your infrastructure committee. We should have had that $3.5 million in their pockets at that meeting, because that question came up when they said, well, how much do we have to pay when the bill comes due? And they didn't know. And that's my fault for not having their guns loaded with that number, because that's the number, 3.5 million, all things being equal, that we planned today. And it can only get worse if the price goes up and the construction timeline goes longer. So for water, we put a rate forecast together, and these are the key components of the rate forecast. Is reservoir number 5. You've got a loan for 1.4 million, and this project's going to cost, last I looked, about 2.5 million for the total project. The difference between the loan proceeds and the total project cost is going to be funded by system development charges, which you've been collecting and you have the cash for. What we put in the budget is for capital improvements during our rate forecast is 100,000 in the treatment department, 100,000 in the distribution department, and then 200,000 in the water system reserve fund. That's the SDC fund, and that's for growth related projects. So we've got $200,000 for repair and replacement of existing stuff. You know, pipes break, fittings break. We've got to replace meters, that sort of thing. And then we've got $200,000 per year budgeted for expansion type projects, capacity expanding things. The one thing that I am concerned about, and you need to make I know you're aware of this, but right now you're in the process of developing a new water master plan. And that's probably be complete here by the end of this year, maybe. It's getting close. That master plan is going to come up with a whole new schedule of capital improvements that we haven't taken into account. We don't know what they are yet, but there's going to be a whole new set of unfunded projects that are going to have to be thought out. And we'll have to come back to you on that in the future. And if you've got millions and millions of dollars, I don't know if you will. It seems like your water system is pretty well funded and you've been keeping your shoulder to it on water. Matter of fact, in my judgment, water's in pretty good shape. Last time I left the meeting, I said, you've got challenges facing you. Well, they're not coming from water, actually. So let's talk about the water recommendations. As I said, water's in good shape. Over the 5-year forecast, we're only anticipating that you're going to take on the loan that you've already encumbered for reservoir number 5, the high elevation reservoir. And that reservoir is going to have, of course, the storage tank, but it's going to have a pressure reducing valve station, and it's going to have its own separate pumping station for supply. We're anticipating that all of the things we just talked about, funding, those cash funding of capital improvements, which is about $400,000 a year, we can do this with 3.25% per year rate increases, which is right in line with inflation. So that's what we're talking about. And from a rate standpoint, your currently average single family customer pays about $52.50 a month for water. By the end of the 5 years, that number would be $61.26. So it's a very modest increase over 5 years. And then here's what we're looking at in terms of the rate profile for the average single family. Once again, you can see the red tip bars going from $52.50 to $57 or $53.90. So that's an increase of $1.70 come July 1st that we'd be talking about. Still well below your peer communities in the area. Stormwater. We kind of scratched our heads as a group and said, stormwater is the smallest of your utilities. You pay $6.50 a month for storm and surface water management services. Our strategy is we're not going to pay to expand the system with rates. We're going to have development. As development occurs and they put demands on your storm drainage system, as conditions of land use approval, they would be required to make expansions to your system. Our strategy is going to be to operate and maintain what we've got to the best we can. And if we do that, and we're talking about adding up $50,000 per year for cash funding of capital improvements, that's catch basin repairs and maintenance, pipe repair, culvert expansion and cleaning and things like that. We can get by with no rate increase come July 1st. We can hold the line on stormwater, and then only modest increases thereafter to the tune of, let me get back here. I think we were talking about bringing it up to $6.75 by the end of the forecast. So very modest.
Did you say add 50,000 or keep? It's just going to be a total budget of 50,000.
No, we put 50,000 increment per year for capital replacement in the stormwater system per year.
Okay, I'll come back to that. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm going to recap here is for water, we're asking for 3.25% for you to consider. For sewer, a minimum of $5, but you know the drill here on sewer. We don't know what we don't know, but we know it's going to be big. And then no increases on stormwater. And then here is all of the charts put back together. What this chart shows is the water, the sewer, the storm all together. What's the total bill? Because that's the bill you write the check for, right? Right now, the average customer in Estacada pays $115.40 per month for all these services. With, $108.07. With the increase, we would ask for $5 for sewer and $1.70 for water. So that would be $6.70 would bring it up to $115.40. So I wanted to give it off to Melanie now to sort of give the staff view on this.
Thank you. I don't have too much to say after all that. I kind of want to just let it sink in or answer questions you might have, but I'm really happy to have Steve putting this together for us. So we have a forecast going forward. It is great to hear that we have like the system development charges that we collect from any growth that happens can fund a lot of things with water and stormwater. And so I think my recommendation would be to follow that plan of increasing, doing a gradual increase on the sewer rates. Like we have been just $5 a year. We'll have to bump that up and, it'd be $5 July 1st. And then next year we'll see if we need to go $7 or whatever, but to kind of keep incrementally going up. But I'm interested to hear if you have other questions or I was pleasantly surprised on the water and stormwater that eases the burden a little bit. So yeah, Councilor McElroy.
What have we spent on maintenance of the storm system over the last 3 years annually?
I can look that up for you. I do not.
Just curious,
Yeah.
50,000 just doesn't seem like enough.
No, that's just for capital improvement. We're going to continue to do operations and maintenance.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
That's for expansion then?
That's for, right. Well,
So that's like SDCs that we would collect.
no, this is
No?
actually $50,000 per year from rates, from rate
Oh,
revenues
okay.
coming in the door that will be used to replace worn out stuff like catch basins, like storm lines that collapse, things like that for just replacement. And
On top of,
on top
on
of
top
your
of the
normal
regular
operations and
maintenance?
maintenance.
Okay.
Yeah, you're right. 50 grand. That's coffee and donuts. That's not going
Mhm.
to cover.
I don't, yeah, I'd be curious to see what the repairs cost over the last few
Sure.
years were to
I've
see
got
if
it.
that 50,000 is enough.
I've got it.
Just gets expensive. I know we're working on a project and dealing with catch basins and stuff like that. And just the materials alone, you
Yep,
eat up 50,000
yep.
pretty quick.
Mhm. Are you looking that up, Steve?
Yes, I am.
All
I've got it.
right. He's got it.
Steve, I got a question for you.
Sure,
It's gonna seem kind of odd to you, I'm sure, but I'm kind of curious. The last meeting you came, I had to go to my therapist after I got because you scared the, you know what, out of me.
Well, that was the plan, Stan.
And now you come back with a frosted cake with frosting. So I'm trying to figure out
I'm just
where
that
I
kind of
missed
guy.
something here.
No, you didn't miss anything. The elephant in the room is sewer. And I firmly believe, and I know I was Debbie Downer last time, that this project is not going to come in at 42,000 and it's not going to get built by the end of 27. That $5 it's going to be $100, assuming growth doesn't occur like it has in the past. So when you're going from $50 now to $100, I mean, the slope of that line we're going to have to overcome a lot. That's where the problem is. Water, you've been investing in water. Actually, when I looked at it, for the last 3 years in a row, you've taken in more revenue than you've spent on the water system, and you've put money in the bank for water. So you've got a good reserve base for water. You've got projects coming your way, and you've got a new master plan. You know, I can't emphasize this enough. This new master plan may be a big surprise to you folks. They may come out with millions of dollars of needed improvements. We don't know. We'll find out. So yeah, you're right. I mean, this is not a pretty picture on sewer. You are facing some substantial rate increases on sewer. The good news is water and stormwater weren't troublesome.
Mhm.
And I was expecting troublesome things from water, just based on what I was looking at the time. But, you know, you've got the money there. In terms of the operating costs for the stormwater.
I think Paul's got a question for you too here.
Sure.
You got a second.
And I just want to clarify, we're talking funding here, as opposed to the shape of the plants themselves, because you said when you started off water is in good shape, but we know we're going to have to invest in this. We know we are hitting capacity in the summer months. So
Right.
the water funding is in good shape,
Right.
that we've got stuff in place, and the sewer funding is what we need to really be addressing, getting on the escalator, as you said, as quickly as possible.
Right.
Okay.
That's exactly what I'm driving at. And, you know, you folks, I can't look you in the face and say, hey, I need $10, just give it to me, because I don't know what the price is. I don't know what the schedule is. And I don't know what the growth is. So, you know, but I do know that it's going to be 3.5 million based on the numbers that we've talked so far. And that's the dark side, is we can't start paying it right now. It's going to be due and payable in 2028 lump sum.
That's just the 1 year though. 'Cause
Right.
we have to pay that interest that's accrued.
The
that 1
accrued
year.
interest. And then after that, it's just principal and interest. And that's 1.9 million a year, every year thereafter for 30 years. So in terms of the stormwater, you spend right now between the labor and materials and services, 336,000. Last year you spent 272. You've got budgeted about 300,000 this year. We're going to put 50 grand on top of that every year. And that 300 some thousand is growing with inflation over time too.
Okay.
So we've got a budget in there to do the job.
Yeah. Thank you.
And then some more questions over there.
I got one more.
So
What-
what's going to
what-
happen?
What
here?
happens with the increase? Say we did increase it $10 a month. Where do those funds go? The difference between the two, between now and when the bills become payable?
They read a check to me. No,
Be-
it goes
be
into
careful
a,
joking
it
like
goes,
that around here,
and we've
Steve.
talked to Sadie about this. we've talked to Sadie about this is you've got to just think about that accrued interest as you've already stepping on that first loan and you haven't paid anything on it, but you've got to track that accrued interest. And from a budget perspective, you've got a budget to take that money and put it into a reserve account. So that's where it's going into a dedicated reserve. And she's going to do that. She knows how to do that. You've got reserve accounts now. And this is going to be difficult for a lot of folks to see because over the years, this reserve account is going to grow like crazy. And then people are going to say, why on earth do you have all this money when you don't need it? Well, because we're going to need it in 2028.
Does that account, that reserve account, go to service interest and principal, or does it go as a payment, a lump sum payment against the principal when the loan starts?
The answer is yes.
Yeah, both of them, right? I should have a microphone to.
What it'll be is you're going to write it in 2028. You're going to actually write a physical check to the DEQ for 3.5 million or 3.5 million bucks.
Okay.
And then because we've got the rates up high enough at that point, we'll have enough money in the rate base that every year thereafter, that 1.9 million principal and interest on the term loan, you'll have that money in there. And then we'll be basically on inflation adjustments for your other costs because the debt will be fixed and you've already got the rate, that money in the rate. But that reserve account money is you're actually going to physically write a check to pay accrued interest the first year of principal and interest. And it depends. There may be some financial engineering on that they can do where, you can spread it out over like February and October type payment things, but it's going to get paid.
I like the idea of the linear growth of the rates and being more aggressive that first year instead of 5 doing 10, because if it flattens out or we come in under budget for some reason, it's real easy to not have a rate increase, but to have a $20 rate increase in 1 year with someone with a very tight budget.
Trust me,
I know
I've seen
10
that.
years or $10 extra now is not as easy to swallow either, but it's going to be a lot harder for someone that's really tight to account for a $20 or $25 increase in 1 year.
Charity or Peter, would you?
Yeah, so exactly what you said has been my experience. I've seen communities that have gradually raised rates over time, knowing that we don't know exactly what the growth assumptions will be. I've also been in meetings where there was a dramatic raise in rates.
Yep.
And people have a lot more trouble planning on that, particular seniors on fixed incomes. And, I remember one in particular where there were a lot of people from a manufactured home park, and really difficult meeting to sit through just because the council in that city had not raised rates for forever. And then I think after a visit from Steve had to raise their rates. It was a substantial amount. And it didn't give people the time they needed. And looking back on that, if they had just raised rates earlier, they could have accrued the interest. And also they wouldn't have one of these events that negatively impacts people. So that in my experience, particularly with people on fixed incomes, getting out the word early and doing it earlier rather than, a shock, because we don't want people coming here and testifying that they're having to choose between buying their prescription medicine or a $35 rate increase or whatever it is. Hopefully the growth in SDCs and everything will keep rates down they have in the past, but that's just my own personal experience. Is in my mind a larger one earlier, and then you can always course correct, but not a shock.
What we'd like to do is, and this is important because of your cycle that you're in right now, you're starting your budget cycle like now for July 1st, which is really in government time, that's right around the corner. We'd like to present you with a rate resolution for your consideration. And that would be coming up at your pleasure, but certainly it'd have to be in concert with your budget cycle, because these folks are going to need to know what their revenue picture is so they can budget down against their expenses. You've all been on the budget committee, you know how this works. So we'd like to get a rate resolution in front of you with these recommendations. What we want to get tonight is a counting of the noses on this sewer thing. This is the only thing that's up in the air. The $5 came from you folks and I don't know where that came from. I was talking $10. So let's go around the room. Jerry, we start with you and go this way, and just where do you want to go with sewer come July 1st?
Wow.
And don't let me put words like it's got to be 5 or it's got to be 10.
No,
It could be 0. It could be anything in between.
I'm in agreement with Councilor McElroy. I'd rather, rather than just do the $5, $5 increase now, a little bit more, so it's not such a huge increase later.
Okay. I think we know what you're.
Yeah, I'm the same. I was just gonna comment earlier. I know this, just knowing people in Sandy, they had a huge sticker shock not too long ago. And I think we need to just slowly increase that. I'm in agreement. I'd rather get ahead of the game. I don't want us to be in trouble financially as a city, as much as I hate to, increase rates for anybody, but I think this would be an increase of the $10 would be better now than $30 2 years from now. So,
And just to give you guys a heads up here, and I think Melanie's sort of started it, you do have an option that you could do a July 1st and a January 1st increase if you wanted. I think ripping the Band-Aid off. Mayor, what do you think?
Well, it's always hard for me to say raise anything.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not my motto, but in this circumstance, I think a lighter amount such as 10 versus 25. I also talked to Sandy when they did that with theirs, and it was not a good day. So I would have to go with the $10 only to make the pain less as we move along. So that's my take on that.
I'm in agreement as well too. 10.
same.
Yeah, I agree as well with the information presented, but I think that we have a duty to the community to prep them as much as we can before any of this happens, from the staff and even from you, Steve, and your team, to be ahead of this. Even if it's $10 in, with the idea of doing this to stop a $20 or $25 raise at once.
Right.
$10 to a fixed income is still a big hit right out the gate. So I think we need to really, although I agree, I think we need to be ahead of prepping the community that
I
this
got to
is
tell
coming.
you, for a lot of communities that have gone through this, you guys have gotten out in front on the public involvement side and the education side. I knew about this project over a year ago just by reading the paper. So I think you've done a great job. You can't say it enough. And by the way, no matter how much you tell this out and go out and scream from the mountaintops, somebody's going to come up here and say, nobody told me.
Yeah.
You're going to get that.
And I understand that. I just think we owe it to the community to
I
make sure that we're more
Completely
than
agree.
transparent.
So if it's okay with you folks, then we'd like to prepare a rate resolution with a 3.25% for water, nothing for stormwater, and $10 for sewer. Then get it to you here probably March. Would that be a good time for you? Would that fit your budget cycle?
Sure,
That way
sure.
we would have you could have plenty of, and you're definitely going to have a public hearing on it, by the way, on this resolution. And that way it goes into effect July 1st. So it's more public involvement, public education, and you're right, you're blunting the spear, frankly, is what you're doing. Okay, folks, that's all I had. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Steve.
All right, I will adjourn the workshop and we will give you a couple minutes before the city council. So if you have any comments to make tonight, the comment